take a picture, maybe downstairs. So, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Second, just because it took 1 year, and I thank the admin staff for that, because we are in a beautiful historical building, but the fact that we succeeded to having drinking water was not. So now you have water. Okay, if you want to refill your bottle, just there. I don't know if you know or you knew that also. It's something we achieved. Having said that, so I'm very glad, very happy to you're here first of all, and very happy to have in Ferrara for a couple of days, Professor Robert Elliott, Professor of Economics, Director of Research, Department of Economics at Birmingham University, Birmingham Business School, authors of several key papers. Just recall to myself, because I intensively read as a young researcher the papers published in, especially in Journal of Environmental Economics and Management, 2003, 2005, on trade and environment, environmental regulations, air pollution, innovation, dirty sectors. And recently, Robert is also a co-author and a friend, I guess, of one of my lectures at UCL. And we had David Madison here 2 years ago. So I, regarding in the most recent paper, I see some collaboration with David. Okay, and sends my greetings to David. It was a fantastic lecture in the late 90s at UCL. So, okay, so having said that, I leave the floor to Robert. Oh, okay, we met in Norway last year, and that's an important factor of life, because I hate running, but the European Association of Environmental Economics organizes this early morning run. I think it's 5 kilometers, something like that. Okay. So I joined the team, and I'm not really keen on running, but so there were 2 groups, A and B, and I stayed in the B group because, and friend and also former student, Professor Giovanni Marin, now in Urbino, was leading with Robert in the A group. So that was, I couldn't do that, but maybe next time. That's my goal of life. So join Giovanni Marin and Robert Elliott in the lead. Okay, so having said that, really enjoyed the seminar, and then thank you for being here. So many. Okay, 45 minutes, and then we may have, very flexible. I mean, we're not in a hurry, so take your time. And then we have a Q&A afterward.
Okay, thank you very much, Massimiliano, and thank you all for coming. Yeah, so last time we arranged this kind of seminar when we were running through the streets in Norway. So that was a great time. So again, each European conference has a 5K run with, again, Giovanni Marin, who I'll cite later, because he works on this green employment work as well, on green jobs, and also Francesco Bona, who's at Milan now, who used to be as part of FEAM. So this has come with Italian links here. So obviously I've got a number of kind of previous PhD students from Italy now based around in different areas. University of Trieste, for example, who's working on electric vehicles, and Marco Giansetti. And I've got, again, some of my other colleagues in the University of Sheffield and other places. We also actually, I mean, they mentioned Giovanni Marin, who's at Urbino. So again, we often have postdocs visiting from Italy. So again, you've got a fantastic team here of postdocs working on environmental-based topics. So again, often postdocs or PhD students, if they want to spend 3 months, 6 months in Birmingham with our environmental team, which is kind of, we've got Anthony Hayes, Matthew Cole, David Manderson that was mentioned, and myself. So we've got a number of junior colleagues all working on environmental economics and sustainability, environmental related topics. Again, feel free to contact me. You can come and stay for 3, 6 months, depending on what your PhD supervisors think, or if you're a postdoc. So again, you've got one of the strongest groups in Italy. So again, it's great to build these connections between the department here and the department in Birmingham in terms of those with environmental sustainability focus. We also have institutes like the Centre for Responsible Business that links in management, links in sustainability from a management perspective. We have a unit called BISCA, which is kind of on sustainability across the whole campus. So that includes environmental scientists and how that links in with social science. So it kind of brings the two groups together. So again, these are good links, and you can visit BISCA or you can visit the department if you want to extend your work. So this work is on estimating the green wage premium. So again, this is with colleagues in China, in Hunan, and Toshihiro in Kyo in Japan, and Joanne Oskin, who was here a couple of years ago, also at Birmingham. And it's part of a series of papers that kind of combine labour economics and environmental economics. So originally, as Professor Mazzanti mentioned, I was going to do a lot of trade in the environment. So thinking international trade with environmental economics. And then obviously I did some work linking trade with labour economics. And now we're kind of coming back round again to working on labour economics, how that links in with the environment. Okay, so this is kind of a growing development, not least with the European Green Deal. You've got the US Inflation Reduction Act. It's all about going for this green transition. Now, of course, geopolitical events that we're kind of currently going through mean that this green transition may be taking a little bit of a backward step. It's suddenly all about oil. It's suddenly all about getting access to fossil fuels, whatever the cost. Europe's going to be going through an energy crisis. I think the UK and Italy have got some of the highest energy costs in the world, not least just in Europe. That's also going to damage competitiveness. If you're talking about small, small, medium-sized enterprises, energy costs is an increasingly important input into those costs. So if Europe has very high energy costs, it's going to lose competitiveness against China, against the US, where they've got a lot of oil and fracking, for example. So, you've got this push for green energy. You've got this energy crisis now with the oil price shock. That really should encourage more electric vehicle ownership. It should encourage more countries to push on solar and renewables more generally. But it's also demonstrating our reliance on fossil fuels for phosphates and fertilizers and everything else. Okay, so it's a very uncertain time, but the green transition is still pushing forward. And some of this work originally was kind of advising the European Commission on how to push forward on these green skills and green jobs. There's no point in pushing and subsidizing and using policy to create green jobs if the workforce don't have the skills to take those green jobs. Okay, and this kind of links into this paper where we're trying to estimate the green wage premium. Do you earn more in a green job? Some of you are doing PhDs, some of you are doing masters in environmental related topics. You may go off and work for big institutions in environmental compliance roles or in green jobs, right? So you're thinking, should I go into a green job? Part of the fact that there's you've got very good MSc programs here with that environmental flavor will also feed into our green wage premium story as we go through. And by the way, just shout out any questions. Just happy to just take questions as I go along. So we're going to focus on Japan for this paper. Our original work was based on the Netherlands. I know there's work going on Italy, especially on looking firm level data and trying to match that in with employment level data and so forth. So what Japan's trying to do is accelerate the greening of her economy also. So European Union has the Green Deal, US has the Inflation Reduction Act, These are all about subsidizing this green transition. Japan is no different. They're trying to address the challenges of climate change. So October 2020, the Prime Minister declared that they're going to go net zero by 2050. That matches European objectives, certainly the UK objectives. In December, they go their own green growth strategy. You select 14 sectors as new green industries. And this includes kind of new energy, which is renewables, I guess, electricity, resource management, and the transport sector. The government estimates it's going to increase GDP by 2 trillion and create 18 million jobs by 2050. So there's no doubt, certainly in Japan's case, that there's the theory is that there's going to that pushing these green policies is going to give a huge number of green jobs. And again, these may be the jobs that a lot of you go into in the Italian case. It may not be this simple. So reshaping the operational structure of firms through green growth, it profoundly means transforming their workforce. The kind of basic idea is you've got people producing internal combustion engine cars and then moving to produce electric cars. Are the skills the same? Are the skills different? In that case, the transition should be fairly simple. But if you imagine transitioning from a coal miner, or of course in Italy you've got huge gas fields off the coast, transforming from someone who works in the gas fields to a green job working on wind turbines, it may not be such an easy transition. This means you may have winners and you may have some losers. So this means changing the nature of work. It means kind of greening the labor force, if you will. This means there's going to have new tasks. You're going to have new green opportunities that are being created, some of which you may benefit from. You're going to have new roles. You've got, many existing roles are going to have to incorporate the skills required to integrate green and low carbon technologies into existing production processes. So you're going to have the new tasks and you're going to have new roles. What's very little known about, and that kind of motivated this research, is the kind of little known about the characteristics of green workers. Who are these green workers? How green is the labor force of an economy? And ultimately, it would be useful to know, do green jobs accrue a wage premium? If they do, how much is this premium? And then does it vary by the greenness of a job? So the ILO 2022 define these green jobs, and we'll define it in a minute. So you can have a green job, the binary kind of definition of a green job, but also you can get the greenness of a job. How green actually is the job, and does that increase your wages? So this is the kind of first questions we want to address. So we want to document the green jobs landscape in Japan, and we're going to provide some of the first estimates of the green wage premium using worker level data. So I'll touch on some of the existing literature that also kind of goes through some estimates of the green wage premium. So there's kind of this dynamic kind of evolution. So the original outlook here was, let's just look at a sector approach. So this is kind of environmental goods and service sector. This is OECD 1999, first defined this. This is kind of low carbon renewable energy economy jobs. And this was the ONS in 2010. This was the very original, just look at sectors, okay? Then we said we really should look at product and process approach. So the BLS, this is the kind of Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US. They kind of came up with this approach of, let's measure the number of workers that are working in green product and process firms, okay, or sectors. And they got this fantastic data. It ran from 2010 to 2011, 2012, and then Obama came in at that time and then just was cutting costs and just scrapped the whole data collection. So we were stuck with this 3 years of data. So myself and Joe Linley, who was recently at King's College in 2017, kind of used this approach as the first documenting of this kind of green jobs in the US and to show the numbers and so forth. But, this was kind of just measuring jobs in environmentally friendly goods and services, where workers' duties involved making their establishment more environmentally friendly. It was a little bit aggregated, and then again, the data collection stopped after 3 years, so we couldn't really do too much in that regard. And then, so the literature kind of stalled for a while, and then we came up with these occupation task-based approach. This is using the US ONET data. So Francesco Vona, who's was at Nice and now he's in Milan running a quite a big center here on these green employment issues. Okay, this is the Etal includes Giovanni Marin, who again joins our running on in the conferences. So they work on this. There's a big Italian connection here, working on this green job issue. A lot of European Commission. This is US based, but there is some more European work that they're working on now. And then myself, this is a recent GEAM paper in 2014, which kind of links. In this case, we're linking Dutch administrative data, and we're looking at innovation and green jobs. So the idea is, if you hire more green workers, do you innovate more? Okay, and the answer is yes. So you hire green workers first, you do more green R&D, and you have a green, you have more green patents. Okay, so that's what we do there. But the key here in this paper is really showing how you can take the US ONET and apply it to a European country. Okay, so there is a European version of ONET, but it doesn't quite give you as much information as the US ONET. And we use these crosswalks, and we take us through how we do this. More recently, there's a kind of approach here using keywords. So this is, you'll be aware, you can use AI for pretty much everything in terms of including writing whole papers. If you get your agentic agent system set up, any PhD student, I'm happy to talk about this now, but I've got my agent set up locally on an iMac, and I've got a mini Mac with Gwen 3.5 that then links to ChatGPT 5.4, and then you can use up to 21 agents that work on different parts of a paper analysis and so forth. So PhD students, you really kind of should be looking at this agentic agent setup now for certainly your research work. But what you can do with this AI is to use text analysis. So this is labor demand side dynamics. Okay, so Sauce et al., who's at LSE and the Grantham Institute, and Sato et al. And Curtis et al., they all kind of use this demand side dynamic. So what you're doing is taking job adverts, you scrape every job advert, you search for green words, keywords like environmental or renewable. Okay, then you can look at the wages offered when you do that text analysis, and you can scrape every job advert in Italy, for example. Every job advertised in Italy, you look at the green words, you look at the wages offered, and that gives you some idea of whether you get a higher wage for doing a green job or where there's more green words mentioned. Okay, so this is quite new. I'm going to try and do something like this for China, which has a very different attitude and obviously different language. But these are useful papers that are going to be coming out now. I think Francesco Vona is also working with his guys on these projects. What hasn't been done before is take a worker approach. This is worker level data, and the measurement's really been off because, you know, with these job adverts, you never know if the job's filled. You never know what the actual salary was. So, and there's literature and anecdotes to say that a lot of companies will advertise a job that doesn't even exist. Okay, it's to kind of look like you're hiring green workers, but you've got no intention of hiring workers. You just advertise. Okay, so there's these kind of ghost jobs, I guess, right? So this is very useful, but there's still some measurement issues that we can't really get to. So what we do in this paper is take a worker level approach, and we overcome some of the objectives. So define a green job wage premium. So workers' pay depends on two main factors. So this is kind of standard labor economics, if you will. One is their skills. So specifically the tasks you're able to perform. The second is scarcity. Okay, so the fewer the number of workers with the skills to do a particular task, the greater wage premium you can have. Okay, so this is kind of standard labor economics, if you will. So when the supply of skills do not keep up with demand for those skills, a skill premium can emerge. So this green sector has emerged very quickly. Okay, so we had this green transition, and we're moving to renewables pretty quickly. So engineers who had these skills in solar or in wind turbines were able to command a premium. Now, of course, the big premium at the top end is for AI engineers. So if you remember, Meta not recently are offering like £1 billion contracts to move from OpenAI to Meta. So these are extraordinary contracts because AI has come so quickly. Those with the skills can obviously earn now vast amounts. The irony, of course, is AI is destroying all the entry level. Any other coding level jobs below that are being wiped out completely. Okay, but at the top end, you're getting £1 billion salaries. Okay, because of the scarcity of skills. But, and we're discussing this just before I started the seminar, it's also possible there could be a wage penalty, right? It's not obvious you'll get a premium. Workers in industries, in green industries and occupations, may have very strong environmental values, and this is what we were discussing earlier, and you might put these values ahead of monetary gain. The example usually is in the charity sector where you'll have these pro-social attitudes. You might work for an investment bank for years, and then you'd decide to retire at 40 or 50 and go and work for a charity because you want to make more of a contribution to society. Okay, so some of these, you might put these values ahead of monetary gain. So it could be, and a lot of you are doing MSc in environmental related topics, perhaps you'd be willing to take a lower wage than to work as a wage slave for a corporation if you're working for a cooperative and doing general good. Okay, there's some interesting, we touch on some of this later, gender issues here. Are females seen to be more likely to take on a lower wage in terms of values? Why might that be? What are the mechanisms behind that? So there's interesting gender dynamics to potentially investigate here. Labour market concentration, of course, can also lead to wage suppression. If there's only one person hiring green workers or only one firm, of course, they can use that monopoly power to reduce your wages, okay, in certain industries. So this phenomenon might be reflected in green sectors. If there's only a few manufacturers of wind turbines or solar panels or so forth. A lot of these energy centres have monopolistic positions. Firms are found concentrated, they could exert this market power. So nevertheless, kind of the existing studies tend to support this green wage premium. So there's a paper, Muro 2019, Vona 2019, Curtis, this is the kind of text analysis, Sato text analysis. They kind of do find there is a wage premium. So we propose the kind of following hypothesis. There is a wage premium for workers in green jobs relative to workers in non-green jobs. So very simple. If you have a green job, we'll show how we define it, you earn more than if you don't have a green job. Then the wage premium increases with green intensity of the jobs. Now, if you're doing labour economics or kind of microeconometrics, you're all going to be thinking, so, it's all going to be these endogenous issues and selection issues. We're kind of address that. We're going to go simple with the OLS to start with, and then we'll do some instrumental variables and endogenous treatment models just to account for that selection. But again, you should be thinking, what might be endogenous here? Okay, if you think about what could be the endogeneity concerns we have in this paper. Sampling strategy. So we're lucky, okay? In this case, we use a samples, it's stratified into 5 regions across the whole of Japan. So remember, Japan's got a population over 100 million. It's a big population. We've got 6 age groups for each gender. We have 12 age groups per region. The sampling size is determined by population ratios. It utilizes kind of labor force survey sampling unit. The survey is conducted online, but it's conducted by Nikkei Research. So this is kind of the largest research company in Japan. All this is to say, if you're using labor force survey in Italy, for example, this would be the sampling and everything else would be done by these big companies, okay, or government agencies. So to say there's no concerns over sampling. Majority of respondents participate in multiple waves. We add new respondents. If we lose people, there's about 10,000 people. If you lose people, more are added in. So it's a 10,000 rolling sample. So let's say you have 8,000. The next year you add 2,000. You lose another 2,000. You add 2,000 in. Okay. As of May 24, there's a rotating panel of 10 waves have been completed. Now, the benefit here is to ensure the questions are as clear and specific as possible. We wanted to minimize kind of interpretive ambiguity. A lot of you may have used survey data. There is, you know, when you do these online surveys using prolific or experimental stuff, you've always got to be careful that people understand what the actual question is. So you have these negative impacts. So we wanted to minimize all this. So together with Akobo, one of the co-authors, again, who he was originally a trade economist. So I kind of met him in the lift in Athens, at a conference in Athens. That's why it's important to go to conferences. I just randomly happened to be in the same lift, going to the same drinks at the top of this lift. And I've been working together for that's 20 years. Okay, so I was probably your age, just met him in a lift, and then we continued working. Now, he works now for the Japanese government. He works for Keio University, but it's linked to the data collecting agency. So the benefit here, we involved in multiple discussions with Toshio Kobo and with the agencies. And the benefit is we were able to put in our own questions. Okay, so you've got these big national surveys. Imagine Labour Force survey in Italy. We were able to inject our own green jobs questions, okay, into that survey. So that's the kind of benefit we had. But we had to make sure we got those questions right. Otherwise, we're wasting a lot of time and a lot of money. So we provided precise definitions and examples of green job activities to help respondents understand and answer correctly. We kind of followed the US 2010 definition. We didn't want to go just make things up. Individuals are identified as green workers if they respond. That's part of their job. They produce green goods or provide a green service or use environmental friendly production processes and products. So imagine you're doing an online survey. You say, does your job involve any of these issues? So we give a bit more detail. Does your job qualify as a green job? And so you just say yes, partly, or not applicable. Okay, so if you think of a university academic, most academics are going to say no, they don't do anything green. As an environmental economist, so myself and Master Milano might be able to say we are involved in green education, right? The MSCs you're doing are education related to the environment. Okay, so environmental economists are kind of green, but not the macro guys, right? They're very dirty. Recycling and reuse, reduction of greenhouse gases, conservation of natural resources, improving energy efficiency, or energy generation from renewable resources. So we're asking 10,000 Japanese workers, does your job relate to any of these aspects? Okay, then we ask to get a continuous measure, what percentage of your working time is spent on green tasks? Okay, from 10 to 100. And this gives us what we call this Keio index. So we have a binary, yes or no to doing any of this, and then a continuous of what amount, how green is your job? I think it comes out that people spend on average around 1.75 to 2 hours a day, the very greenest. So it's not massive still, okay? So this gives you some idea of the green categories. So here's our 10,000 workers. About 30% do some sort of green job. They say yes to one of those aspects, right? 70% still not green. Now, in other green jobs papers, when you really, on the task-based, the numbers are much smaller, actually. Okay, but this is quite a broad definition, if you will. And you can see most of the 26% are in this green activity 1, 21 do green activity 2, the bottom one, energy generation from renewable resources, still 14.3%, but not a massive amount. Then we define, in the paper, there's more data, a lot more tables in the paper than I'm going to present here, but we define very dark green jobs if you spend more than 30% of your time, dark, light, non, and non-green. So non-green 69 matches the 69 here. So you can see most people, although they're 30% do green jobs, most of them are pretty light green, only less than 10%. Okay, and that matches some of the stuff that Vona and Marin found in their previous work. Okay, so that just gives you an overview of what's going on. Here's our first stylized fact. The size of this circle is the size of the industry. Okay, so what you can see here, if you have a bit of imagination, you can see there is a positively upward sloping curve. The greener your job, weighted by the size of the sector, the higher the wage. Okay, so this is your hourly wage, the more time you spend doing green tasks, the higher wage you've got. Okay. In terms of our baseline regressions, this is very standard labor economics. So log of wage, okay, depends on binary. Do you have a green job or not? So did you say yes to any of those 5 categories? And then we have X is a large number of different controls. And then we have kind of fixed effects, different fixed effects plus error terms. Then we do this for the continuous measure as well in the same way. Okay, we use the same controls. So we have the log of the hourly wage. So getting that is a pain because you get annual wages and you have to work out the average, how long, many hours you work. We've got part-time workers, full-time workers. So this took a while to get this hourly wage, but it's usually in labor economics, you really should be looking at hourly wage, not annual wage, which might include overtime and all these different things, right? Green jobs are dummy. Do involve at least one green task. Keys are continuous variable. X is our standard control. So in labor economics, you want, what's the definition of how much you earn? It's going to depend on your education. It's going to depend on how long you've worked in the job and other demographic characteristics. So it could be region. So north of Italy tends to pay more than south of Italy, for example. So where you're based matters. The gamma term is a vector that captures prefecture. So that's like region in Italy, industry, and occupation. So of course, occupation matters, industry matters, your location matters. So we control for all these characteristics. So here's the headline OLS regressions. Okay, so what do these show us? The headline here, this is about any controls. You earn around, a green job, you earn around, in this case, 30% paid. You're paid 30% more than a non-green worker. Okay, then we add in prefecture fixed effects, industry fixed effects, occupation fixed effects, firm size fixed effects, and that number comes down. We then add in standard controls also. So standard controls are age, tenure, this sort of thing. I'm not reporting those because they're very standard results. So you earn more if you work longer at a company. Interestingly, so we include gender in standard controls. Gender in if you know Japan's a very traditional society, so there's still a 15% wage penalty for being a female. That's quite high. So for doing identical jobs, if you're female, you earn 15% less. I'm not sure what the number would be in Italy, but 15% is pretty high, right? In the UK, it's lower. That's controlling for everything else. That's the standard wage penalty for females. Then we add in these extra controls. So these are the big 5 personality traits. So I put these in. It's interesting. So this is extroversion, agreeableness, how conscientious you are at your job, whether you're neurotic, and whether you're open. Okay, so if you look at what the signs are here, if you want to earn more money in life, as when you go and work, when you finish your MSc or PhD and you get a job, you'll get more money if you're more extroverted. You'll earn more money if you're open. If you're conscientious, and if you're conscientious, no effect on your wages. Right? Good to be conscientious, no effect. If you're agreeable, so you say yes to everything, you earn less money. Right? If you're neurotic, okay, you earn less money. So my advice, be open, be kind of slightly extroverted, and be prepared to say no when you're asked to do things over and above your existing work, if you want to maximize your salary. Okay, the results here are standard in labor economics. Okay, these are fairly standard now. So try and see where you are on this kind of combination of these things. Just be open and be slightly extroverted if possible. Then we look at the so let me just go back. So this final column, this is a 10%. So you control for everything else. If you're working in a green job, you earn 10% more than if you're in a non-green job, okay, based on our definition. 10% is a decent premium. Then we look at how green your job is. We have the same kind of results for extroversion, being extroverted and agreeable and so forth. I should say we also include these job abstract, routine, manual. So this is, I mean, David Autor does this for the US. It just means obviously you earn less if you're in a manual job. If you're doing a routine job, no effect. If you're doing abstract skills are kind of much higher level skills. So you're having to change your job all the time. It's more critical thinking. So you want these kind of, ideally, these are the more interesting jobs, right? But of course, if you involve abstract skills, then you earn more. Manual, less. Routine, which is kind of in the middle. Okay, again, you're doing MSCs at a top institution, you're going to have good skills, you can have good abstract skills, so you should earn more. We do this for the Keogh index, and again, we still find, if we go to this final column again, we find the same standard results. And this, the definition of this 3.67, it kind of means if your job is 10% greener, your salary goes up about 3.6%. Okay, so as your job becomes greener, your salary goes up. So one, you earn 10% more being in a green job. The greener it is, you earn through every 10% increase, 3.6% increase in salary. Now, that's the OLS regressions. You might be concerned about endogeneity. I don't want to dwell too much on the technical issues, but the concern is that estimates of equation 1 might not be unbiased estimates because we've got this selection issue. So why might we have a selection problem? Policies designed to promote green transitions. So you might have tax incentives, you might have subsidies to firms to hire green workers or adopt environmental practices. The more, the more talented of you, let's say you've organized, put you all on a scale of ability, the better, more talented or more productive, you might go into green jobs because you're the best, because you see there's bigger salaries. So more productive firms are more likely to pay higher wages. More productive firms pay higher wages, and they might also be more likely to invest in the green transition because they can see where that future is. Okay, so workers could self-select into green jobs because of higher wages. It's not green jobs pay higher wages. It's the best go into green jobs. So this might bias our results upwards. So we do an endogenous treatment effect model. This is the standard workhorse in kind of causality, microeconometrics causality, right? This is a kind of standard, it's like a Heckman selection model. It's fairly standard. We just have two different regimes. And we look at the error term, this term here. If, it turns out we don't have an endogeneity concern. We have to test for it. We don't have an endogeneity concern. So we can run this Rubin causal model estimates instead, but we have to go through this process. But it also takes account of reverse causality and some of these other issues. So we estimate this ETM control function approach. It kind of estimates this correlation between the unobservables of the treatment assignment and potential outcome. If there's no correlation, which we find, then endogeneity is not really a concern. We consider two exclusion criteria. So this is when you do kind of these selection models, you kind of have an instrument which needs to be correlated with one but not the other variable you're interested in. And this is the hard thing. If you're doing instrumental variables, you can come up with, referees can often just reject your paper. They just, I just don't like your instrument. I just don't believe your instrument. And that's it. You've done everything. You've proved the instrument is valid. They'll just say, I don't like it. Right? And we've had problems. So we've got two instruments or exclusion criteria. So we use the Keogh index of parental occupations. So you look at so we've got this data's got parents' occupation. So imagine all of you are doing MSCs, some of you are doing MSCs in environmental related subjects. The question is why, right? Is it because your parents were working in a green occupation, right? And that might be true. So we measure the greenness of your parents' job. That should not be correlated. So your parents' job should not be correlated with the wage you earn now. Okay, now some people criticize this. They might think, well, if your parents are doing green jobs, that must be high skills. That means you're going to be from a richer family, so you're going to be higher ability because you have more private tutoring. So you're more likely to enter a green job because of the high pay. So but this one, okay. So now we looked at father's moral non-cognitive test score from the 1941 survey on soldiers. We aggregate this to the father's birthplace, right? So it's your moral standards. So if you have a very kind of moral outlook, and it can be linked to Taoism, and this was for the World War II draft, then you're going to put those morals onto your children who are more likely to take a green job. That's the idea, and that should not. Your father's 1941 survey aggregated to prefecture should not impact your wages, right? So as an instrument, this should work. And fortunately for us, this is positive and significant and correlated in the right way. So we run the causal model. And here's the kind of punchline for the OLS. So we can see the positives on moral score, parents' Keogh index. Column 4 is probably our favorite. We include all 3 exclusion criteria. And it seems to be, it's your mother's, the greenness of your mother's occupation, another thing what your mothers do, is more likely to lead you going into a green job. Okay, so have a think about that. So it's not the father's, it's the mother's greenness of your mother's occupation is what encourages you to enter a green job, plus your father's moral score from 1941. Okay, this number, so look at this, 0.079. Before, it was 10%, 0.1. So pleasingly, in when we're doing microeconometrics, when you start instrumenting, you kind of expect the coefficient to go up or down a little bit. If your coefficient goes up 2 times or 3 times or 4 times, I've seen even higher than that, you've either got a serious amount of measurement error or you've got a bigger concern, right? So so now our number of 10% waste premium has now fallen to around 8%. Okay, so it's still positive. It looked like the OLS was slightly biased upwards when we do all the instrumental variable methods. So, so it's an 8% waste premium now instead of the existing 10. We would like to do this. We would like to do this for the kind of Keogh index, but the way this ETM is set up, it's usually just for binary measures. So we, originally we didn't have this in the. There's an ISA working paper of this paper here. We didn't include any of this in that paper because it was much more basic. Now we can't, because it's binary. It usually works on a binary variable. We kind of had to construct. It wouldn't work for the Keogh index as itself. So we had to kind of construct threshold binary variables. So what this means really is for each percentile, so let's say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, we construct binary treatment variables. So we're comparing the top 10% of the Keogh with the bottom 10%. Okay, instead of just continuous, we needed to kind of construct a binary variable. So let's compare the top 10% with the bottom 10%, top 20% with the bottom 20%, 30%, 40%, and then 50-50. Okay, so we do all of this, and it kind of gives us a number of coefficients, and we can kind of plot these as such. So it's just a way of visualizing the results, and we kind of get these coefficients are higher, as you'd expect, for the top 10 versus bottom 10, and it kind of goes down as we go to 50-50. But the key is the results as the coefficient's still positive and significant, which kind of shows that even on the continuous and on the binary variable, the waste premium persists. We do a little bit of heterogeneity, so we want to look at mechanisms. We've kind of moved this into the appendix now, but this is kind of showing that where is the premium? Okay, so we've got this 10%, 8% premium. Who's getting the premium? And it is high. This is the absent one is medium, okay? So, of course, it's high skilled, earn more, but also low skilled, because you've got a lot of low skilled workers who may be working, constructing wind turbines or so forth, right? So you've got this polarization of green jobs in the low skilled and the high skilled. Male, but female. So the bigger coefficient is on female here. So females in green jobs, although there's a wage penalty, they earn more relative to their characteristics than you might expect. Younger, I mean, there's a survey going looking at younger earn more than middle-aged, and older is insignificant. Okay, so you know the younger benefiting. Why? Because you're coming out with your new MSCs, right, with environmental topics. You can go straight into these jobs. You've got the skills that you've learned here that older workers are just not going to have. Okay, so younger workers are getting this a bigger wage premium. So female, younger, high skilled, you're in a good position. Okay. In the last 10 minutes, I'll just go through the decomposition analysis. So this is the kind of standard microeconometrics. The next stage is to kind of do decomposition analysis. Now, labor economics, this is kind of standard. So Osaka blinder decompositions, you may have heard of. That's just where you take, it's usually done for wage inequality, right? You want the wage inequality number. You say, what's driving this wage inequality? Is it, is it income? Is it the occupation? Is it gender? Is it race? And all these sort of things. I think I've got a paper from 2007, 2008 that includes occupations and does these decompositions to look at ethnicity discrimination. Right? Once you control for everything else, you control for everything, occupation, everything else. There's still a wage discrimination based on ethnicity. Again, that's not going to be a particular surprise to anyone here. But the new advance is this Donato, Fortin, Lennox, DFL. What this done really is just kind of shifts the distribution. All we're doing here really is it's a semi-parametric estimation, which we don't have to worry about fit and linear terms. So we construct a counterfactual distribution. So it kind of just reweights the observations, adjust the weights of individuals in the sample to reflect the distribution of characteristics in the other group. What does that mean? We've got our green job people, and we've got the characteristics of non-green. And what you do, because these characteristics aren't going to be identical, you reweight the non-green to have the characteristics of the greens. That might be you increase education a little bit, for example, or you reduce the age, or you increase the age. Okay, so you reweight the characteristics of the non-green to match those of the green. Okay, and this involves this, and you get these two density functions, and that's the first stage. Okay, so this kind of gives us this characteristic. So if you look at log of hourly wage, here's the green workers. So if you look at the large dash line, here's the non-green. So you can see the non-green have a much lower density here, okay, compared with the green. So what this DFL does is shift that distribution, shifts this dotted line to become this stricter dark line. And you can still see the main differences at this top end and a bit at the bottom end here, okay, once we shift that distribution. The next stage is to use this Furpo Florin, and the same other two guys are the same. You change the F instead of the N. Okay, now we do the DFL, and the FFL builds on the DFL. What's this mean? What we're doing here, this is like the Osaka blinder decomposition. It allows us to look at all the characteristics of the wage. So we first shift the distribution, then we look at all the characteristics. So it's a two-stage procedure. We do the reweighting first. Then we want to look at the distribution of changes or differences into a wage structure effect and a composition effect. Okay, so the second stage then decomposes the two parts into the contribution of each explanatory variable. So here we just kind of use this recentered influence function regressions. All this does is just managed to break down our wage beta by the different characteristics. It's easy just to show you. So here's the kind of total decomposition. So you can see here's the total difference in wages, and you can see a lot of it is based on the composition. So the blue and red, they kind of overlap at this bottom end. They get a bit wider at the other end, which suggests there is a wage structure effect here. But mainly it's the composition. So the wage differences, why there's a wage premium, is because there's differences in the characteristics. So again, this is kind of the aggregate. So we look at the composition only. So here is wage effect and composition. So we ignore the green now. We're going to look at this blue line. Here's the error specification. Again, this is almost zero. So it's showing that the composition effect is almost totally explained by our characteristics. Okay, so when we did this for the UK years ago, that difference was often explained by ethnicity. For example, Japan has very little immigration, so there's no ethnicity variables in our sample. Okay, so we're going to break down this explained line here in the next diagram. So here's our detailed decomposition results. Now, what is this showing us? It's showing us that a lot of the wage difference or the premium is based on the tasks you do. So really, the premium is based on the tasks. We know these tasks are abstract skills. So that's where the wage premiums come from. It's the tasks you're doing. What else is significant? Pink line here is occupation. So occupation matters. Okay, so what job you're doing, whether you're an engineer, for example, or an environmental compliance officer in a high-level management position. So occupation matters, and then the tasks you're doing within that occupation matter. If you look at gender, just out of interest, gender is very high in the very low skill, becomes then increasingly insignificant. So it's almost that females in the low skilled occupations are earning more in green jobs. So we need to work out what is going on in this bottom quartile here. Other variables, so the big five, so qualifications tend not to matter, they matter towards the end. So these are going to be the MSCs that you're doing or the PhDs that you're doing, okay? This is where qualifications start to kick in. Big five kind of kick in at the end here. So do you know, there's famous studies that show that a lot of CEOs are pretty pretty sociopathic in some levels, right? So that might be picking up the big five kicking in here. Otherwise, kind of age, tenure, these are not big drivers of the wage premium. It's really driven by the task and occupation. So what do we do here? Just to wrap up here, we use a kind of representative sample of Japan. We include questions that we've been able to add in ourselves. And then we want to map out this job landscape in Japan. And these are kind of the first estimates of the wage premium, certainly using worker level surveys, not just using job adverts or so forth. And what do we find? We find once you take account of instrumental variables, selection issues, we find green jobs earn around 7.9% wage premium compared with non-green jobs. We find a 10% increase in the greenness of your job gives you a 3.67% increase in the average hourly wage. So you want a green job and then try and make it as green as possible, I guess. The wage premium differs by skill, gender, and age. Our decomposition results suggest that for higher income groups, labour market assigns greater value. So remember, these are identical workers, attributes in green jobs compared with non-green jobs. So you're literally taking workers with identical attributes, but if you're in a green job, you earn 7.9% more. Okay, the explained wage gap, it seems to be driven by task differences. There are just gender disparities in the very low percentiles, depends on occupation type. Education and tenure seem to play smaller but consistent effects. So the green wage premium is found across various demographic groups, but it kind of reflects the increasing importance of environmental sustainability in business. And this links to some of the programs you're doing. Environmental sustainability, all companies need really to have an environmental compliance officer or working in sustainability to help reduce costs, reduce energy costs, which is going to be more important in the future. So you really need these guys in here. And it's kind of recognition that workers who contribute to these efforts are more valuable and in demand than traditional, less sustainable jobs. And this should not be surprised given the movement to these green transitions. So, but we've got to remember that workers base their decisions on anticipated earnings when you make career choices. So you've done your undergraduate degree, you're doing a master's degree, some with an environmental sustainability topic, because you're looking. It's not where, in ice hockey, it's not where the puck is now. You want to skate to where the puck's going to be, right? And if we keep going through a green transition, then your career choice is going to be it's going to influence the wage, right? So the existence of a wage premium, of course, is going to increase the attractiveness of green jobs. So we're going to speed up that transition to more sustainable economy. Okay, so more high-skilled, great students are going to want to work in the green economy. That will speed up the green transition and so forth. It means, as a workforce, it's going to be increasingly endowed with the skills needed for a green transition. Exactly what the European Commission was talking to us about. We can't have a green transition unless we have the skills. So how do we get the skills? And universities can play an important role here, but also apprenticeships and everything else. But of course, the big question now, and this is the next work we're going on to next, is this premium might be temporary, right? Because a lot of you are doing MSc, so the supply of people with green skills is increasing. So companies will have a bigger choice of workers, so they can reduce that premium. So it might just be a temporary premium that exists at the moment. Indeed, Misato Sato at LSE has kind of found in her job data that premium does seem to be falling a little bit, right? So this remains an open question for future research, and it's something we're trying to work on now, but it's hard to get this panel of green jobs. Oh, and that's references. And that's it, finished.